We're going to go through. We have Nez Savala with us today, who's the community manager for the St. Louis Community College. We have Tina Carroll, who's the chief comms officer for Carroll and Company. And we have Sean Hadley, who's the director of public affairs at MSD, Metropolitan Sewer District. So without any further ado, I guess I'm going to give my little spiel to those that are looking to kind of go up the career path, because I talk to a lot of universities and students. And one of the things that I say is, in your career, you're always going to either lose a client or be fired from a client or be forced to leave an organization. And some of us, because of that, have started our own companies. But it never fails. It doesn't mean that you did something or didn't do something. You said something, you didn't say something. It could be the CEO has a new granddaughter or grandson and they want to put in that position. And you always have to be ready. And I think what makes us public relations professionals is really how we pick up and we move on to that next project, that next client, or that next job. So with that, we're going to start kind of our talking about our own career paths, as well as kind of advice that our panel has for you as those in the PR field. So we're going to start with Nez Savala. Nez, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Hi, Chris. How are you? Can everyone hear me? I hope so. So
Yep.
Hi.
We can all hear you.
Everyone who's joined us today. So I'm Nez Savala. I am the communications manager at St. Louis Community College. I have been part of PRSA St. Louis since probably 2006. I moved to St. Louis in 2005 to take a job, and that's part of my journey, and I'll get to that in a little bit. I have my bachelor's degree from Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas. Yes, I grew up there. I was not born there, but I did grow up in Kansas. I took kind of a long break and the long way around into my career. When I graduated K-State, I moved to Oklahoma City for a little while. Then I moved back to Manhattan, and then I moved to Dallas, Texas, and interned at a small agency for about 6 to 9 months. And then I worked for CompUSA, which is no longer in business, but that is a computer retailer. And I worked in the advertising department, trafficking preprints, which if that is a term you're not familiar with, y'all know the Target circulars that come in the paper every Sunday. Well, my job was to see those circulars for CompUSA from beginning to end. And then I decided that work was for the birds. And so I went to graduate school. I applied to graduate school to University of Missouri, University of Missouri, Columbia. So I have my master's degree in journalism with an emphasis in strategic communications and writing from the Missouri School of Journalism. I did start out in broadcast and determined very quickly that I didn't like it. I don't like to be on camera. But oddly enough, being on camera is part of my job now. I have worked in nonprofits. I have worked in public education in higher ed. I have worked in public education in K-12. I've also worked in city government. And I earned my accreditation in public relations in 2013. I've worked very hard to earn that APR, and I worked very hard to keep it. So I've had about a 20-year career in public relations. I think for me, it's going to be easier if you all ask me questions about what my career path has been or my career advice, but I will start out with with 3 points, and then I'll turn it over to Carol. Be yourself. Your journey to public relations, to and through public relations, will not be like anyone else's. Mine wasn't. I took the long way around. I really took the long way around, and I don't think that was intentional on my part, but that's just how it worked out. So I had my highs and lows. So that's why I'm saying be yourself and understand that your journey is not going to be the same as the next person. Be flexible with achieving your goals. I didn't know that school PR was a thing when I started working in school PR. I didn't know what accreditation in public relations was until someone in PRSA explained it to me. And honestly, I didn't know what PRSA was until I started working in city government. So I was flexible with what I was learning. And then I also learned to be flexible with achieving my goals in my career. And then the last thing is, don't overlook your mistakes. You will make mistakes. I still have a note that was written to me by my city manager when I worked in city government. And in my evaluation, you know, he praised my work, but he also told me to cut myself some slack. I'm still learning that because I was trying to get everything perfect, and it doesn't work out that way. So please don't overlook your mistakes. Learn from them, but don't overlook them. And so I'll turn this over to Carol.
Actually, before we go to Carol, I do have a couple questions for you because this is being recorded and it will be placed on our YouTube page. And I encourage everybody to ask questions in the chat feature. If you have any questions for any of the speakers, and then we can actually, at the end of the session, we can make you live so everyone can have a conversation at the end. And we'll go from there. But you had a great point that you didn't know what APR was until it was explained to you. And I want you to kind of explain just briefly what it is and how it's helped you in your career.
Okay, so APR, Accreditation in Public Relations, and I'll give you, I met a mentor. She wasn't my mentor right in that moment, but she became my mentor. Her name is Rita Holmes Bobo, and she used to be part of PRSA St. Louis, and now she is in the Kansas City area, is working in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So when I met her at my first PRSA meeting, she pulled me to the side, she chatted with me, she knew I was brand new, and I asked her about those 3 little letters that were behind her name, APR, and she explained Accreditation in Public Relations. Like, she ran it down for me in 30 seconds. And in that moment, I thought, I want my APR, but I was still very new in my career in public relations. Wasn't even sure I was going to make it to 5 years before I could get to qualify for beginning the process. But I did. So the Accreditation in Public Relations, I often tell people that I studied harder for my APR than I did for my master's degree, even though my master's degree is in communications, or excuse me, in strategic communications. A lot of those same principles apply in APR. How it's helped me, it has helped me stand out from other people as far as in my career field, but it's also made me a better PR strategist and understand things and be better at my work and understand things from a different perspective. I will tell anyone, if you are interested in pursuing your accreditation in public relations, please do it. Know that it takes a lot of work. Know that your journey to completing your APR might not be the same as anybody else's. I did not pass my exam. Tina was on one of my panels, but I took the test 4 times before I finally passed it. That's another story for another day, but I am very proud that I earned my accreditation. I will work to like nobody's business to keep my accreditation for as long as I work in public relations.
So I'm going to ask you another question. Tina can actually also probably chime in on this because for me, if I had to do it all over again, I went and I got my master's degree, and it cost me about $45,000 to get my master's degree. And I just finished paying off my loans just a couple of years ago, 18 years after I got my master's degree. So a question for you is, if you had to do all over again, would you choose to get your APR and study your master's, or would you get your master's? I mean, if I had to do it all over again, I would go to get my APR and not go for my master's. But I'm going to ask you that question.
I didn't know what an APR was. I had my master's degree long before I started in my true PR career. So if I had to do it over again, I'd do it the same way. I'd still have my master's and I'd still get my APR. But that's me.
I think it's a matter of what you want to do, right? If you're wanting to teach at a university level, you're going to need the master's in PR. I don't have a master's in PR. I have a master's in social work, which ironically is uniquely connected. It is still about communications, but the accreditation, the APR, I feel like I have that master's in communications because it's all about strategic communications. So I feel I have that foundation, but if I want to teach at a university level, I would need a master's in PR or a master's in communications. So that's my take.
Let's turn it over to you since you're there already.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tina Carroll. And as Chris said, I am the Chief Communications Officer for Carroll & Company. Now, Carroll & Company has been around as a sole proprietor, I think since the dinosaurs walked the earth, pretty much all of my career. I started out of school. My undergraduate is in mass communications from SIU Edwardsville. And I started in my career at a down economy, which meant that jobs were hard to find. And so I started doing contract work or freelance work and just have never given it up. There have been times throughout my career where Carroll and Company has been a full-time, thriving, building, expanding business. And there have been times when it's contracted and I've taken on staff positions with companies and continued to run the business. It also has evolved from what was largely a production company. So like I said, dinosaurs were walking the earth. So back in those days, there were a lot of big television facilities in organizations. And I mean like full-blown television studios. And that's when cameras weighed 452 pounds and you carry them on your shoulders instead of, you know, with your phone, right? So, and people paid a lot of money for them. That was back then. In Carroll and Company, I did a lot of writing, a lot of producing, directing, so forth early on. Ultimately, I landed my first full-time position as a communications specialist with Venture Stores, which was a regional retailer for those that are not familiar with the company, kind of like a Target. Worked with them for 5 years, and it was the best first job out of college that you could imagine because I had my hands in everything. I was working the cameras and directing and writing and producing and voice talent. I was also taking headshots for executives, writing newsletter pieces, other promotional pieces, events. We would do semi-annual profit and loss meetings, which were huge scale events in hotels with multi-camera shoots and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it was a great first experience out of school. And I was with Venture for about 5 years. And then when I left Venture, I went to work for the PBS affiliate here in St. Louis, KTC Channel 9. Loved it. Was passionate about it. It doesn't pay a lot of money, but it was great. And I loved it and produced documentaries and all kinds of things. So it was a blast. I really loved it. From there, went to work for Mercy as a communications specialist. At the time, it was St. John's Mercy, not the health system, but the hospital within the system in St. Louis, Midwest. And was doing a lot of education training, but they were very kind of behind the times at that point. They were basically stick the camera in the back of the room and let the doc talk for 8 hours and then subject people to actually have to watch that stuff. So I was like, nah, nope. We're gonna fix this. And so we did, started doing more formatted, better produced, better written programming to the point of where the actual PR and communications team, because I wasn't in that. So keep in mind, your position may not be in the PR and communications department. I was actually in organizational development. And a lot of my career has been in organizational development, including when I was with Venture, right? So at Mercy, when we were cleaning up our act and producing better product, the PR and communications team said, we need a lot of patient education videos. Do you think you can do that? Yeah, I think we can do that. And so was able to work through and really brought the level of production up. After I left Mercy is when I really kind of forged into Carroll and Company full on. I also pursued my master's at that point, which, as I said, was in social work, counseling. You know, I find a lot of PR professionals and students, and especially young PR professionals that we talk to, we truly have an altruistic heart. You know, our heart is in helping people. So it's a logical fit. You know, the social work piece of it is a logical fit. I also remind people that interpersonal communication has to transfer this way too, right? So you have to speak to one person. So those skill sets are very much transferable. So did that for 5 years, and then had an opportunity to go to work for Magellan Health Services. And this is where the PR stuff starts coming in. Went to work for Magellan Health as a communication strategist. ultimately working up to director of member and marketing communications. So I was with Magellan for about 10 years. And through that course was introduced to PRSA. Magellan actually was headquartered at the time in Baltimore, Maryland. And so we had a lot of our materials, our strategies and so forth that were entered into the PRSA chapter of Maryland's competitions, because they had a lot of award ceremonies and that kind of thing. And so that's how I got acquainted with PRSA and really started saying, yeah, you know what? I want to earn my APR as well. And so I got my APR in 2007, 8, I think 2007, 2008, somewhere in that time frame. Was with Magellan for 10 years and then got laid off because it was 2009. From there, I went to work for Banyan Communications, and Banyan is a small agency that does a lot of work with government entities. So I learned a lot about working with government agencies and GSA schedules and all kinds of crazy stuff. I was account director for them on a project that they were awarded as a small business when the Obama administration was infusing money into the system to try to bring the economy back, right? And so I managed a national, for the Centers for Disease Control, and a national campaign for smoking prevention and cessation and obesity prevention and cessation across the country. So my team and I consulted with state and local health departments in helping them understand how do I measure communication effectiveness? What kind of tools do I need? What kind of agency should I hire? How do I do that? How do you measure effectiveness of social media campaigns and all of those kinds of things? We were consultants in that capacity. Then Banyan decided that they wanted to go back to their roots, which was more building online training platforms, and said they needed the money from my salary to pay for trainers to do that. And so I got laid off again. So this happens quite frequently in one's career, we find. It's kind of part of the deal. So as long as you're ready to ride the roller coaster, it's all good. So then after I left Banyan, I started doing some contract work and still running Carroll & Company. Carroll & Company evolved into more of a consultative and PR company as I was working at Magellan. And most recently, my newest career path, and this has been in the last 3.5-4 years, is in change management. So I also work as a change management lead for Bayer Corporation, Bayer Crop Science, headquartered here in St. Louis, where I lead a team of 5 who basically work with sites to try to help them get prepared for behavior change. So I get to marry my social work and my communications component in that regard. So, a lot of stuff. You know, kind of like Inez, and I think you'll hear why. I have a couple of points, and I want to just open questions, whatever I can help with. But my career advice for people is, first of all, be open to the possibilities. Hopefully, if this long dissertation tells you nothing, it tells you that you never know where the next opportunity is going to come from, or there may be opportunities that you were not even expecting, but suddenly here they are. Now, I'm not saying don't have goals. You need to have goals and you need to work towards them. But if you're so singularly focused and so myopic, you're going to miss the chance to take advantage of the thing that may be right in front of you. That could be your dream job. So be open to all those possibilities. The second one is kind of a sister to it, and it's be curious. I tell students all the time, intellectual curiosity is not something that you can teach. But you can nurture it. Being, curious about everything that's going on in the world around you will open doors and possibilities, and you will have opportunities that other people only dream of. You just have to be open to it, right? And willing to think, well, what makes that? Well, how come that happens? Those types of questions are always running around in my head. So be curious. Number 3, stay humble. You can learn something from everybody you meet. the most educated to the least educated, the youngest to the oldest. It may be something small, it may be something big, it may be something that you don't even know that it has value until years later. You know, a lot of young people, right? They're technology natives, consume, absorb information at a rate that generations in the past have never known. But the reality is, until you unplug for a minute, step away, take a breath, talk to people, you're likely to miss some opportunities. So be humble, be aware, know that you can always learn. You're never too young, never too old to learn, right? Number 4 is engage, volunteer. That's my number 1 career advice, is volunteer. That's how I got so many of my clients for Carroll companies and so many opportunities career-wise. So whether you're serving on boards or committees or with nonprofits, you know, you have an opportunity to not only get great experience, but you're also getting exposure to a lot of influential people who can help you. And, you know, the truth of the matter is, most of us hiring manager types, we want to know the work ethic and the integrity of the people that we might be working with. And a great way to see that is to see how people work when they're volunteering. So engage. 4th, and I only have 2 more, Chris, be realistic. Okay, be realistic. Now, not everyone can do what we do, but most people think that they can. And what that usually means is that the supply of PR and communications people in the industry almost always exceeds the demand. We're not going to be able to command, for the most part, we're not going to command the salaries that those with tech degrees and coming out of school with computer science and technology degrees that can name their own price. Some people will, most of us won't. I'm not saying that you can't make good money in PR and communications. You can. But if making $1 billion by the time you're 30 is your goal, then maybe PR and communications isn't the field that you need to be in. Okay.
Tina, I would have known that 20 years ago.
But don't you love what you've done? I mean, look at all of the great things you've done, Chris.
Okay, go on to your last point.
My last point. Follow your passion, right? Follow your passion. From the time I was 18 years old, I said, if I'm going to do something for my whole life, I doggone better love doing it. Have I loved every job I've had? No, but I've always had the ability to pursue my true north, which has always been helping people to learn, be informed, understand, so that they can make the best choices for them and their family to live their best life. So that's me. Questions?
All right. We'll turn it over to Sean Hadley, who's the Director of Public Affairs for MSD and the President-elect for PRSA St. Louis. So, Sean, I see you're still on mute. So there you go. We'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Chris. And Tina, that was very good, very insightful, and Nez, the same thing. So my name is Sean Hadley. I am the Director of Public Affairs for the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. We are the 4th largest sewer district in the country. So it's a pretty extensive job handling wastewater and stormwater as well. And I am actually the incoming president for PRSA. I'll be taking over for Chris and I work alongside Chris now, but I'll be taking over for Chris here next year. So we're in the process of making that transition the first part of the year. So you'll see more of me as we go down the road. But real quick background on me is that I actually I have a bachelor's in science and political science, and I have a minor in journalism, and then I have a master's in business administration. Why I have all that, I have no idea. I mean, I can tell you that I started out in college. I actually played football in college. I went to Central Missouri State on a football scholarship and had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to write for Sports Illustrated and wanted to do something in sports and own a own a TV station and be an agent. All that stuff I wanted to do all in one as a kid, thinking in college. And I remember sitting in my room, dorm room after football practice, and I was watching Sports Center, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be that person behind the scenes that writes, not the sports anchor, but the person behind the scenes that writes. So I started looking into what I needed to do and how to get there, and started to do some research and do some digging and figure out what was what. So I started as a journalism major, and I was already taking a bunch of classes anyway. So got down to the point to where my sophomore year in college, I got an internship at Channel 5 KSDK here in St. Louis in the sports department. I was I was probably the youngest intern there because I was a sophomore. Everybody else was going into their senior year. And so I felt very lucky about that. But when I did my internship, it was for free. So I didn't get paid for that at all, which is one thing that a lot of my other friends were getting paid for these internships in other businesses. And I'm like, what am I doing? But did it, loved it, passion for it. Intern Mike Bush was actually the anchor in sports at the time. And it was before he moved over to news. And so I, would talk to Mike a lot. And one thing about Mike is that Mike, back in the early 80s, 70s, 80s, a lot of these people didn't finish their degrees. And Mike Bush had told me one time the biggest regret he had was that he didn't finish his degree because he ended up getting a job offer his junior year in college just on a whim, and his career took off from there. And he was like, one of the things he always told me was make sure that you get that piece of paper, whatever you do. So that's the biggest thing I can tell you, is to make sure you have that, because it does open up a lot of doors, even if it's in underwater basket weaving. I mean, dead serious, it doesn't matter. It just opens doors. So I already had a strong work ethic anyways from playing football and playing sports, playing team sports. And so did my internship, and then I went back to college, and I'm not even going to bore you with this story, but long story short, I ended up changing majors my junior year from journalism to political science, because I felt that I would rather write a paper than shoot a commercial or do some production type of stuff. So I went, did political science, got my degree in political science, came out of college, first job in Kansas City, Missouri, at the NBC station as a associate sports producer and an assignment editor. So I got to do my passion and do sports and produce sports and everything. I was in Kansas City for a year. Went from Kansas City, this is in 2001 to 2002, came to KSDK, changed over to news. One of the reasons I did that was because literally 3 months after I started working at KSDB, there was this really big event that happened that changed the way that we communicate, and that was 9/11. And 9/11 happened, and I'd only been in news for 3 months, and we were wall-to-wall coverage. Everything literally changed that day. How people have the need to have more news, now, not at 5 o'clock, not at 6 o'clock, or not at 10 o'clock, but like instantly. And still just a little bit before social media. But so I made the change to news because I felt I'd have a longevity in my career. Now, I had no thoughts of public relations, didn't know what PRSA was, didn't know anything about that. Didn't care, because my job, my goal was to get to the network by the time I was 30 years old. So I got to Channel 5 when I was 23. Spent a little over 5 years at Channel 5, and literally I stayed there for a little bit longer. The day before my 30th birthday, I got hired at the NBC Network News to be a producer for NBC Nightly News and NBC Today Show, and all the other properties that come along with it. That moved me to Charlotte, North Carolina. So now I left St. Louis and went to North Carolina, working in a network bureau. And I got to do a lot of traveling. And one of the things I can tell you about working at the network level as opposed to working at the local level, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm gaining experience and gaining knowledge and understanding. I'm dealing with people on the other side, from the public relations side, pitching me and telling me this is a great story. Our client wants us to cover this, or wants this to be on the air. Don't you think this will be a good story? And I learned really quickly that it's about storytelling, and it's about crafting your message and making sure that you get to the right person. And at the time, I was actually that gatekeeper to a lot of PR people that, I didn't even realize that, they would call me, and I'd have friendships with them and everything. And they would, pitch me their story ideas. And I realized that I'm like, it's how you pitch it, and how you, and who and what you, and how you, there's no bad, quote unquote, bad pitch. It's just a matter of how you do that pitch. And really think about that. And that's kind of one of the lessons I'll talk about here a little bit, is that, making sure you do, how you craft your pitch and how you get to the right people. Your boss is the thing about being in public relations. You're the communications expert. I see myself as an in-house journalist here, meaning that I think like a journalist still, and I see myself that way. And so I look at it like, when I'm going to give the story to the TV news, okay, how's it going to appeal to the masses? Because quite honestly, if you pitch something about, we've got a ribbon cutting coming up, and we're opening up a new Boys and Girls Club building or something like that. What's the impact there? What's the why? Who cares? And that's what you have to think about. You have to make that understanding to the news people, to the journalism, the people that want to cover that story. Who cares? Why do they want to care? Who's it going to impact? And that's the biggest thing I can tell you coming from that side of it. I got to cover a lot of stories. I went to the bridge collapse up in Minneapolis when that happened, when the I-35 bridge collapsed. I covered the airport tornadoes here, when the Good Friday tornadoes. I covered the Joplin tornado. The last thing I did I'm skipping around a little bit. The last thing I did in TV was the Ferguson uprising. So I was on the first part of the Ferguson uprising. I was involved in that pretty heavily, and it was pretty intense. While that was going on, I was actually interviewing for my job here at MSD. And how I got into PR is kind of crazy, because I moved back to St. Louis, skipping a little bit. I moved back to St. Louis in 2010. And what happened was I'd taken basically kind of a sabbatical from NBC. I took about 6 months off and tried to find myself, try to figure things out. And I decided I was going to start a consulting company and started doing small business consulting. And just because I've been helping all my friends in the PR side, so I was like, I can do this. So that's what I started doing. And I felt I had a passion for it. And so I just, kind of kept driving that. And at the same time, I went back to NBC and do freelance work for NBC. So I still was working both sides of the field here. I got my big break, as they say, in the PR world, when the PR people stopped seeing me as a TV person, was when I got the job with the City of St. Louis Comptroller's Office. I was their public information officer. And I will be honest with you, I did it for a resume builder to get the experience. I worked for an elected official. And when you work for an elected official, your ideas are not your ideas. And Chris is laughing at me because he knows this. It's like your ideas go along with that elected official. So things that you think about, if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican, that doesn't matter. If you work for a Democrat, you have a Democratic view when you work for that person, when you're in her office or he or she's office. So that was one thing I learned about working in politics. I was like, okay, that's something I don't want to do. Even though I had a political science degree, I was like, I don't want to do this. I did it for a year, because I have a mentor that told me, get this under your belt for a year, and then you can pretty much write your own ticket to go wherever you want. And she was right. And so I did that, left the comptroller's office, went back to work for NBC again, doing freelancing. And then along the way, I actually I took another sabbatical and started working at Home Depot selling floors. And the reason I tell you this is because it was actually one of the best jobs I ever had, because I actually did not have to think. I could go in, punch a clock, and if somebody wanted this carpet or somebody wanted that floor, that was the way it was. There was no like negotiating, no haggling, no strategic thinking or anything like that. I was trying to strategically think about when I was going to take my lunch. That was about it, and I loved it. So while I was working there, I ended up going back into when Ferguson happened. I ended up going back and working with NBC, and then the MSD job came up, and this is where I'm going with this. It's about networking. A lot of this is about who. I said this a little bit ago about when you're pitching your stories. It's about who you know. It's about having those connections, and it's about when you're looking for the next position or looking to work with somebody, use that network. And I can tell you that I got approached by this job by a friend of a friend of a friend who was friends with my predecessor who hired me. I got approached by another person saying, hey, he needs somebody like you. You need to apply for this job. And I was like, I'm not interested. I knew nothing about sewers, knew nothing about any of this stuff. But I ended up going in and doing the interview. And then when I got in the interview, I did not want the job. And I was probably the biggest turnoff in the interview, but I got the second interview. Don't ask me how I got the second interview, but when I got the second interview, was me and my predecessor. We sat down and had coffee. He told me, what he wanted. And he told me about how, what we could do with this job, with this position. And he basically started talking my language about, he needed somebody that could do proactive media and go out there and get us in front of people. And so I was like, well, I can totally do that. I do that in my sleep. So I came in here, and I've been here for about 7 years now. I took over as the director about 3 years ago. And I have a staff of 5, and we're pretty versatile, pretty diverse, and we do a lot of different things within the sewer district, and we do a lot of our own storytelling inside of here. So we do a lot of video production on our own. We've actually been nominated for, God, I think now we're going on 5 Emmys for just for public public PSAs. I'm trying to think of the word, but we're going on 5 Emmys now, and we do a lot more of our own internal PR. We do our own storytelling, and the outside journalists will pick up on that. And so, like, meaning, like, we'll put something out on social media, and they'll see it, and they're like, "Hey, can we do that story?" Yeah, you can go do that story. We already did it for ourselves, but we do a lot of that. I mean, you look behind me. There's a TV monitor behind me. We have 24 of those across the district. We have 7 wastewater treatment plants and 3 maintenance yards. We have 24 of those TV monitors, and that's how all of our employees get their news on what's going on with the district. We've got all kinds of content. All the content we put up there actually lives on our YouTube channel too, which our YouTube, our social media handles are MSD Project Clear, but all of our videos and stuff and all that content live up there. I'm not going to go into any lengthier part of my story. I did cut off a lot of how I got here and kind of some other things, and I'll leave that open for questions if you have any. But the biggest thing I can tell you, what Nez and what Tina have told you, they're giving you great advice. The advice I can give you, because I'm coming from a whole different side of this, is that I was an outsider. I was a total outsider that had to work my way into getting into PR. I didn't think anything about doing PR. I didn't know what an APR was until I came to PRSA. I'm still kind of learning about what the APR is. As far as, like I said, the biggest thing I can tell you is I'm a big networker, and that's one of the things that I value, and I do think is a good thing to have in your arsenal, along with everything else that Nez and Tina have said to you. I can tell you that I wouldn't be here if it wouldn't have been for just the work ethic I have, and the drive, and being about your word, but also I give back. I've gotten here, and I've helped 3 or 4 other people out since not just working here, but other positions and stuff like that, because you hear things along the way, and I'm gonna tell you that, and there's a lot of people that know me. If I'm not gonna put my name on the line for you unless I believe in you, meaning that I will absolutely put my name on the line for you, or do that. But you gotta be willing to do the work on your end. I'll do my part on my side, and if you ask me for a reference, and I say, yeah, absolutely, I'll give you that reference, I'm gonna give you that reference. But know that you gotta do your part. It only goes so far. And if I find out that you haven't done your part, you get one shot with me, and that's it. And it's happened before. I mean, there's people that know me that can tell you that I'm a man of my word, but at the same time, it's like your word's all you have at the end of the day. So
Well, and
I'm gonna
Sean,
turn it over to you, Chris.
great point as far as networking and the role that Public Relations Society of America has with people in a region is that I hate to say we are kind of cliquish, because we do help each other out. And part of networking, I can tell you, Tina and I have worked on a couple different projects bidding. I'd say in the last 5 years that I've been a member of PRSA, I've probably done maybe 8 different RFPs with other members of PRSA. And Tina can tell you, we utilize our network of people within the organization. So networking is really key. We're kind of the people in the know. When a position is up within our industry, we're one of the first to know, and we spread those positions around as far as knowledge of those positions to those that are involved in PRSA. So that's one point I'd like to say is, networking is key. Really get out there and interact with others. Join PRSA. We're actually running a program right now. It's called the Triple Play Program. You can find it online, but you can get a discount on becoming a member. You can join a section, and it's actually hugely discounted right now to the end of November. So if you're thinking about joining PRSA, give myself a call, or Sean, or anybody within our board, and we'll help you out with that. The other thing I want to bring up that a lot of the panel has stated is that in our history, I think everyone on the panel has been affected by 3 different major societal events, which have caused recessions or downturns in the economy. Those of us that were here during 9/11, Those of us when the stock market crashed and the whole housing market crashed in 2007, 2008, and now the coronavirus pandemic. And these are all times that has affected the entire industry of PR and communications. And anytime you should know, if you're getting into this field, anytime there's a downturn in the economy, PR and communications is usually the first department to get cut. Wrongfully so or rightfully so, it's exactly what happened. So you have to be versatile to be able to get back up there and have those networking options in place, to rely on your network of friends to find out what other jobs are out there. But what truly makes us professionals in the industry is how we get up and move on to that next opportunity, how we might see that next opportunity before we're even there, or be laying the groundwork to get there. So those are 2 points I'd like to make. And I know we still have a couple people left on the call. So if you want to ask any questions in the chat, please do. I can also make you a presenter so you can speak. So if you'd like to say a few words or join us in the presentation, just write your name in chat and I'll activate you to actually be able to speak. But Nez, would you like to say anything else?
I appreciate Sean's story. There's some things about Sean that I did not know. I didn't realize that that your work with MSD, I thought you'd been with MSD longer than you have. With Tina, her being a sole proprietor, I knew that she operated her own business, but I didn't know that you operated your own business while you were doing work for other agencies. So it's also interesting to hear what my colleagues have done in their careers. And with Chris, he has got an interesting story too with his career in chemistry, PR, and multimedia, and the work that he's done, not just locally, but nationally. So I can appreciate what everyone is saying, especially about the volunteer. Tina, I appreciated that point. I am a volunteer for Komen, Missouri, which is an affiliate of Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. And I've been a volunteer in some way, shape, or form since I've lived in St. Louis, starting just, I would volunteer here and there when I had the time to help with packet pickup for what was then Race for the Cure, and it happens every June. And now it is called Walk, the More Than Pink Walk. And I've gone from that volunteer who helps every once in a while to being active on committees that plan events for Komen breast cancer to keep funds, raise money in the St. Louis area, and make use of it in the St. Louis area to provide mammograms and services, patient care navigators, etc. I am also a volunteer with Ferguson Twilight Run. For those of you who don't know me, I am a runner, have been for almost 20 years now. And I got beat by being a volunteer with Ferguson Twilight Run. It helped me do something that I love to do, which is run, also be on a committee, meet some new friends, and be involved in the city and the community where I now live in Ferguson. My job that brought me here to St. Louis was the city of Ferguson. I was their PR person for a couple of years, and then I went on to K-12. But being a volunteer really does have an impact on what you do in your career, and it helps you develop some skills that you already have. It helps you learn some new skills, and sometimes it helps you just walk away from PR, do what you want to do, have a good time, and be involved in something that becomes personal to you. So if you are not volunteering in something, I highly recommend it. Please, find something to volunteer and make an impact and learn something about yourself and how you can transition that into what you do every day.
And Nez, I'll kind of I'll kind of take it from there, because volunteering, when I got laid off, I guess in 2009, I'm not one to sit on my fingers or sit on my thumbs and twiddle them and just wait to the next opportunity. I decided to start my own company and to kind of move forward, and took on a really small client kind of in a volunteer capacity. And that small client led to me getting sent to a meeting to represent the St. Louis City firefighters at an event where the FDNY was at, and Gary Sinise. And that small, I don't want to call it volunteer, but I felt like it was a volunteer position. I got sent to that meeting and ended up leading with a really big national celebrity as a client. They'd asked me to produce 26 concerts over the following several years in all different cities across the country. And I ended up representing the foundation, the Gary Sinise Foundation, for many, many years. So that volunteer work could lead to something much bigger. So I have made everybody or several people presenters. If anybody would like to make their video open or would like to unmute themselves, you can ask a question.
Hi, Lori Beth Crawford.
And I see Crystal's there. And
Hi, Crystal. Hi, Lori Beth. I haven't seen you in so long. Y'all, this is Lori Beth. She and I volunteer with Komen, Missouri.
Great. So Lori Beth, what were you looking to get out of today? Is there any questions we can answer for you?
No, just honestly, I have a broadcast background, broadcast television background, but I was always on the creative services end, so the promotion end, but now handling PR for the St. Charles City County Library. So just kind of wanted to hear if there was anything that I could just glean and add to my arsenal, and always open to hearing everybody's stories. So thank you for sharing.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us today. Tina, do you have anything else you want to jump in with? Or Sean?
No, I was smiling. Lori, so you're here in St. Charles County. I'm out in St. Charles County too. So good to know.
Yeah, my mom lives out in St. Charles County. I went to high school out in St. Charles County, so yeah, it's it's a small world.
Go
But,
St. Chuck.
Go St. Chuck. No, I don't know about that, but I'm actually I should say I'm an Iowan by a heart though. That's where I'm originally from. Went to high school there. It's
Arkansas girl.
Laura, what do you? I mean, did you find it difficult moving over?
Me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I did not, because I did spend 11 years between broadcast television and my position at the library. I spent 11 years at the YMCA.
Okay.
And at the Y, we were a small marketing group, but we kind of did everything. So
Yeah.
I found that transition going from a creative services manager, where I knew what the big vision was and made sure it happened on a daily basis, to going to the nonprofit world where you did everything. And I was calling old art directors saying, it's a Mac, how do you turn it on?
Yeah, because I mean, one thing I didn't say is that that was one of the things I did do a lot of, like when I did my consulting stuff, I did that basically for free to because I had a job interview when I moved back here with an agency. I'm not going to name who they are, but they the person there was a really good, another kind of mentor of mine. But they told me when I didn't get the position that I didn't have enough PR experience. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's why I'm going for the job, to try and get the experience. And that person was like, well, yeah, Sean, you were great, but you just need to get more PR experience. I'm like, well, how am I going to do that? She's like, well, you'll figure it out. And so I started doing some volunteering PR type of stuff, and just making up press releases, no joke, like kind of just writing press releases for friends and kind of just pitching things and getting things out there. And then that's when I got the job at the comptroller's office. And then I literally, that stepping stone took my resume, like it moved TV down a notch, even though I had network experience and all this stuff, and that it moved it down a notch for me. And literally now when I go for when I've gone for positions, that actually, the TV part of it's actually like, that's a plus side now, as opposed to when it was a negative. I mean, I turned that into a positive. And so it's just one of those where, and again, I didn't set out. I mean, I didn't set out to come into the public relations. It just kind of happened. Crystal Howard's on. Crystal Howard actually works with me at MSD. Glad to see her here.
Sean, I think it's interesting, your story, you kind of fell into it, or it's something that kind of grabs you by surprise sometimes. Like for me, I got into political communications just by a fluke. I was a junior in high school, and I was on the high school newspaper, and I had a camera and loved photography, and jumped on top of a newspaper stand in 1992 and shot some photos of then Governor Clinton campaigning for president. And I jumped on top of a newspaper stand, shot some photos, and I showed my work to the campaign the next day. And I ended up at 17 and a half years old, got hired as the Missouri staff photographer for the Clinton Gore campaign. And literally, I didn't know jack shit about politics, but I knew that I had Secret Service clearance to everything that happened in Missouri that whole year. So as a way for me to volunteer, I ended up getting access and riding in the same car as Jesse Jackson and Ron Brown and Henry Winkler and Barbara Jordan and all of these major people all across the country, but here in St. Louis, just because of showing my work. And I want to throw it back to Nez, because Nez asked a question a couple weeks ago to a group of us. Some of us are here on this call about showing your work and representing yourself and maybe your own website. Nez, do you want to talk about that? Because I know you got a lot of feedback from a lot of different people.
Yes, I did. So, Chris mentioned this earlier about COVID-19 and the work that the world that we're in. I have to say I am grateful and blessed that I'm still working. I work in higher education, although I work for St. Louis Community College. And although our student numbers are down, and we probably expect that we will be down in enrollment in the spring too, we are still able to work. But I'd be naive to think that my job is set for the rest, for however long. And so one of the things I sent an email, I sent a message through LinkedIn to ask about portfolio sites or using LinkedIn to showcase your work, not necessarily because I'm actively looking for another position, but when the time comes, I want to be ready. I want to be a little bit more relevant. As to borrow Tina's phrase, when dinosaurs walk the earth, I'm kind of still holding on to some of that, but also I wanted to ask my peers, what do you think? And so I set a deadline of November 1st to make a decision of whether I was going to build or create a website, a portfolio site to showcase the work that I've done, or use LinkedIn. I still haven't made a decision, but I did. I felt like it was important for me to ask my colleagues. And the question came from, in my department, we are interviewing for a position. And as you can imagine, a lot of people applied, and some of them were more than qualified. And I feel like they applied because they've lost their jobs in communications and were looking for something. And many of them have been furloughed. And one of the candidates had a portfolio site, a website that I was like, wow, this is really nice. And he had like 30 years of experience, applied for a position that only requires 3 to 5 years of experience. But what stood out is that, one, he was open to applying for jobs that he knew he had way too much experience for, but two, his website stood out to me, and the content that was on it. And I thought, oh, I don't have anything like this. I wonder if I should. So I wanted to ask other people what they thought.
So Nez, can I jump in on with this one?
Absolutely.
So because it's funny you said that, because I was actually here today messing with my LinkedIn profile again and kind of shuffling some things around. I'm not going to tell you guys what you should or shouldn't do. I found LinkedIn as something I started using a couple years ago and really tapped into it. It actually didn't hurt that my son's godfather worked for LinkedIn, and we had a lot of conversations about some things, and he kind of gave me some insights on how LinkedIn worked. I actually, I'm looking at my profile right now in my corner, but I was on it today, updating it. I realized I didn't have I have a reel that I put together of all my spokesperson stuff. That's up on my LinkedIn page now. I just added that up there today because I have a Vimeo page also. So I put all my like a lot of my video content lives on Vimeo, and so or you can even use YouTube as well. But I've got a lot of I've got a lot of multimedia stuff as well too. I've got my resume up there. I've got there's other documents I put up there before, but you can use that LinkedIn. There's a section, it's called a featured section in there. You can build that up to put your stuff in there. And I can tell you that a lot of recruiters look at that stuff, because if you're looking at LinkedIn now, a lot of jobs when you're applying, you're able to connect your LinkedIn profile and apply, instantaneously. And that's one thing that I constantly keep my resume updated. I have the LinkedIn Premium right now because of my because of my connection at LinkedIn, and I'm going to probably keep it, even though I've had it for free for like 6 months now, over 6 months. But the insights on there are tremendous. Like I've had friends call me up, and because they know I have it, and they're like, "Hey, can you look at this job?" Because on the insight side of it, you can see like where you fall in the rankings of those jobs, as far as because it aggregates your experience on your how you've updated your LinkedIn page. It aggregates your experience and tells you where you fall. It also gives you salary base. If it's open on some of the jobs, or some of the jobs don't have it, but it gives you that salary aspect. It gives you a lot of other things there that are valuable. And so I'm actually, because I've had it for the LinkedIn Gold, the LinkedIn Premium. I had it for 6 months now, just on a trial, whatever. Or I'm going to keep it because it's the insights I'm getting off of it are just amazing.
So Sean, maybe we should ask your friend to do a webinar for
Sean.
us, how to like
He
actually create a LinkedIn page.
he left LinkedIn and he's at DocuSign now. And so but I mean I've been messing with mine for, I mean, I've got it up. I'm not going to share it with you guys. You guys can go look at my page if you want to, but I've got it set up to where I've got the whole featured section. I've got content in there. You can shuffle it around, and I've got my resume up there. I just uploaded my resume again this afternoon while I was sitting here. I was like, oh, I made some updates to it. So I was like, oh, let me go ahead and update it up there because it's so simple. And I tell people all the time that are looking, that'll hit me up, go pull my resume, download it, use it. I don't care. I mean, if you want to slap it and change the name, good luck explaining all the stuff that's on there. I mean, that's up to you. But I mean, the template and everything like that, that's why it's there. It's there to be shared for anybody that wants to look at it, ask me questions about it, borrow it. I mean, that's what it's there for.
So I want to respect everyone's time. I know these webinars are usually 1 hour long, and we're coming up on that 1 hour. So I definitely want to thank everyone for joining us today. Next week's webinar is on winning new business, 5 indications of successful new business development. So if you want to join us next week, we'd love to have you. I do suggest if you want to see some of our previous webinars, go to the YouTube page for PRC St. Louis. We'd like you to check out what we have. There's, I think, about 15 different webinars that are up online there. So does anyone have any closing comments or questions you'd like to ask?
I would like to thank everyone for the time, and Chris, thank you for organizing this, and thank you for letting us share just a little bit about our journeys in public relations, and hopefully we imparted a little bit of wisdom.
Yep.
Yeah.
We told a really good story.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, my contact information's out there, LinkedIn and everything. I know Nez's and Tina's are out there. I'm the incoming president, so I'll be around. But feel free to reach out to me if you need something, have questions or more advice or anything like that.